Friends, if you want to watch super hit movie I Care a Lot in English, then you must like this video if you are visiting our channel for the first time. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel, friends, in today's video. The movie we're going to talk about is called I Care a Lot. We will talk about what this movie is and where you can watch it, all the interesting facts about this movie in today's video. I'm going to tell you, I'm also going to give you all the information on which platform or on which satellite channel you will get to watch this movie. Also, we will talk in detail about the technical department, music department, pre-production, filming, post-production, budget, box office collection of this film. We will also talk about the story of this film, and I will also give you a small review of the story of this film. Apart from this, we will discuss about the facts of this film storyline, star cast actors' performance in the film, and which character has played which role. That's why I request you, friends, to watch this video till the end, so start the video. I Care a Lot is a 2020 American black comedy film written and directed by Blakeson. The film stars Rosamund Pike, Eiza González, Peter Dinklage, Chris Messina, Macon Blair, Alicia Witt, and Damian Young, with Isaiah Whitlock Jr. and Diane Wiest. The film follows a con woman who makes a living as a court-appointed guardian, seizing and selling the assets of vulnerable elderly people, including the mother of a dangerous mafia boss. I Care a Lot had its world premiere at the 45th Toronto International Film Festival on September 12, 2020, and was released via streaming on February 19, 2021, through Netflix and Amazon Prime Video, depending on the region. The film received positive reviews from critics, with Pike winning Best Actress in a Motion Picture, Comedy or Musical at the 78th Golden Globe Awards. Plot: con artist Marla Grayson makes a living by convincing the justice system to grant her guardianship over elders whom she pretends cannot take care of themselves. She places them in an assisted living facility where they are sedated and lose contact with the outside world. She then sells off their homes and assets, pocketing the proceeds. She and the court deny a man, Mr. Feldstrom, access to his mother after he attempts to force his way into the facility. He later threatens her outside the courthouse, saying that he hopes she is killed. Dr. Karen Amos informs Marla about a potential case, a wealthy retiree named Jennifer Peterson with no apparent partner or close family. A judge appoints Marla guardian after she and Dr. Amos falsely testify that Jennifer suffers from dementia, confusion, and loss of mobility. Marla moves Jennifer into assisted living and gets to work selling Jennifer's furniture, car, and home. While rooting through Jennifer's possessions, Marla discovers the key to a safe deposit box. It contains a watch, gold bars, banknotes, and hidden loose diamonds, which she takes and stashes away. As Marla's girlfriend and business partner, Fran, oversees the renovation of the house, a cab arrives driven by Alexei Ignatieff, who says he is there to pick up Jennifer. Fran says that Jennifer has moved. Alexei returns to his employer, Roman Lunyov, distressed. Roman, a crime lord, is revealed to be Jennifer's son. He threatens Alexei and orders him to find his mother and report back. Mafia lawyer Dean Erickson offers to pay Marla $150,000 in cash to release Jennifer, but she refuses, willing to do it only if she is paid $5 million. He threatens Marla and takes her to court. The judge dismisses the case as Erickson cannot prove Jennifer hired him. Fran discovers Jennifer Peterson is an identity stolen from an infant who died of polio. When Jennifer refuses to tell Marla her real identity, Marla teams up with property manager Sam Rice and withdraws, filling many of Jennifer's basic needs. Finding his mother's safe deposit box rifled, Roman sends 3 thugs to Jennifer's facility to take her. This effort fails, and Marla helps police apprehend Alexei, who is one of the men. Fran's police contact tells them that Alexei is the sibling of 2 other mafia bosses who supposedly died in a fire. Having failed to rescue his mother, Roman has Dr. Amos killed at her office. After hearing this news, Marla and Fran move into an unsold property of a previous victim. Jennifer is baited into attacking Marla when she visits the facility and is moved to a psychiatric ward. Marla is kidnapped while Fran is attacked in their home. Marla is taken to Roman and demands $10 million to arrange Jennifer's release. He refuses, and his associates knock her out with chloroform and send her in a car into a lake. She escapes and returns home to find Fran beaten unconscious as gas fills the house. They escape an explosion and flee to another unsold property. Marla shows Fran the diamonds she has hidden there. She offers Fran a choice. They can use the diamonds to start a new life elsewhere, or they can get revenge. Marla and Fran track down Roman and kidnap him. They force drugs into his body, burn his car, and leave him on a forest trail. He will be discovered high on drugs and with no identification. Roman is discovered by a jogger and is rescued. With no identity, Roman is designated a John Doe by a judge who appoints Marla as Roman's legal guardian. Marla visits Roman and offers to release him and Jennifer from her guardianship for $10 million. Instead, Roman offers her a partnership in a global business based on her scam. She accepts and, using his money and connections, becomes a powerful, wealthy CEO. Roman is reunited with Jennifer while Marla marries Fran. While leaving a TV interview, Marla is shot by Feldstrom. He says that his mother died alone in the facility because no one would let him see her. As Feldstrom is arrested, Fran cries out for help as Marla bleeds to death in her arms. Cast: Rosamund Pike as Marla Grayson, Eiza González as Fran, Peter Dinklage as Roman Lunyov, Diane Wiest as Jennifer Peterson, Chris Messina as Dean Erickson, Isaiah Whitlock Jr. as Judge Lomax, Macon Blair as Feldstrom, Alicia Witt as Dr. Karen Amos, Damian Young as Sam Rice, Nicholas Logan as Alexei Ignatieff. Production: It was announced in May 2019 that Rosamund Pike had been cast to star in the film, which would be written and directed by Jay Blakeson. Peter Dinklage and Eiza González were added in June. In July 2019, Chris Messina and Diane Wiest joined the cast, and filming began the same month. Scenes were shot in Dedham, Massachusetts, including at the Norfolk County Registry of Deeds. Release: The film had its world premiere at the Toronto International Film Festival on September 12, 2020. Shortly after, Netflix acquired distribution rights to the film in select countries and regions, including the United States, France, Germany, Latin America, South Africa, the Middle East, and India. Amazon Studios acquired the rights to release it on Amazon Prime Video in Australia, Canada, Ireland, Italy, New Zealand, and the United Kingdom through Black Bear's international distributor STX. It was released on both services on February 19, 2021. Over its first weekend of release, the film was the most watched on Netflix, then second most in its sophomore frame. On April 20th, 2021, Netflix revealed that the film had been watched by 56 million households. Reception: Critical response. On the review aggregator website Rotten Tomatoes, 79% of 235 critics' reviews are positive, with an average rating of 7.010. The website's consensus reads, "A searing swipe at late-stage capitalism, I Care a Lot is an exhilarating pitch-black comedy with a wicked performance from Rosamund Pike." Metacritic, which uses a weighted average, assigned the film a score of 66 out of 100, based on 39 critics, indicating generally favorable reviews. Owen Gleiberman, writing for Variety, praised writer and director Jay Blakeson, whom he compared to Alfred Hitchcock, stating that when he finally gets around to staging an action sequence, it's a doozy because he takes his time and has you hanging on every moment. For Empire, Terry White wrote that Blakeson doesn't always remain in full control of the story and tone, but the ride is so wild and entertaining that it doesn't particularly matter, and gave the film 4 stars out of 5. Slant Magazine's Chuck Bowen gave the film 2 stars and a half out of 4 and wrote that Blakeson means for us to champion Marla as a feminist icon for a while, though he deflates this potential moral idiocy with an ironic ending. Various critics praised Pike for her performance as con artist Marla Grayson. While the Associated Press said Pike pulls something off that few else could as a protagonist, Entertainment Weekly wrote that she delivered her best performance as a villain since Gone Girl in 2014. Writing for Out, May Rude said that I Care a Lot was almost a perfect lesbian movie, praising the sinister glee Pike brings to what could have been an all-time great lesbian sex symbol role and the great chemistry that she and González have as the story keeps escalating and twisting and turning. However, she strongly criticized the undignified and blunt ending. The New York Times said that the film was an unexpectedly gripping thriller that seesaws between comedy and horror, praising it for being cleverly written and wonderfully cast, and for its ice-pick dialogue and introduction of Peter Dinklage as Roman Lunyov. Conversely, Adam Graham of the Detroit News gave the film a D and said that I Care a Lot was a misguided black comedy, as viewers didn't have a way to relate to the character of Marla Grayson. The Chicago Tribune's Michael Phillips gave the film 2 stars and wrote that while the acting's uniformly strong, the script is distressingly weak. May Abdul-Baki from Screen Rant gave a mixed review, lauding the performances from the ensemble cast, but writing that there is something completely missing from I Care a Lot that makes it a hard pill to swallow. In his review for the Boston Globe, Ty Burr rated the film 2 out of 5 stars and noted that in Rosamund Pike's chilly, hollow central performance, you may find it difficult to care at all. Anthony Lane of The New Yorker criticized I Care a Lot for being pleased with its cynicism and constantly pushing boundaries of tastelessness. He notes the film sidelines the elderly characters and their significance, focusing more on the heartless actions of the protagonist. Joe Morgenstern described the film as a shallow comedy and as deeply dislikable, and said, "The film is arch, but no triumph, an airless exercise in mistrusting its audience, and all of it is accompanied by pummeling music that sounds like a Vangelis wannabe recorded during a brownout. Caring, sir, is my job, my profession," says Rosamund Pike's dead-eyed protagonist in this efficiently callous, if rather uneven, black comedy thriller. "All I do every day is care." Exactly what Marla Grayson cares about is clear: money and the power to do whatever the fuck we want that goes with it. To this end, she has developed a profitable scam that preys upon older people, hijacking their lives and fortunes by becoming their legal state guardian and then milking their assets for all they're worth. As a slimy-suited shark lawyer observes, "If your whole enterprise isn't the perfect embodiment of the American dream, I don't know what is." But when Marla picks the wrong cherry, she finds herself face-to-face with Roman, Peter Dinklage, a former Russian mafia drug trafficker with a penchant for cakes, smoothies, and cutting off his enemies' fingers. Written and directed by Jay Blakeson, who made the viscerally twisty three-hander The Disappearance of Alice Creed, I Care a Lot is a gleefully vicious affair, carried by Pike, who wears a smile that could strip wallpaper at 40 paces, and whose vape smoke evokes a dragon preparing to burn the world down. After an early courtroom confrontation with an exasperated Macon Blair, who claims that Marla has effectively kidnapped his mother, she tells him she will grab your dick and balls and rip them clean off. From here, we watch Marla and her partner and lover, Fran, Eiza González, target their next victim, Jennifer Peterson, Diane Wiest, a woman of wealth with no family, living quietly on her own. Despite insisting that she doesn't need help, Jennifer is court-ordered out of her house and into the imprisoning corridors of the Berkshire Oaks retirement home. A bravura sequence executed with a Kafkaesque efficiency that reminded me of Steven Soderbergh's nightmarish Unsane. Yet for all her apparent vulnerability, Wiest is terrific at portraying the gut-wrenching mix of bewilderment and helplessness her character experiences. Jennifer is not quite what she appears. In fact, she is the worst mistake you'll ever make. A woman with hidden assets whose disappearance from her home sets alarm bells ringing with people who can make Marla's life very uncomfortable. One rebuffed visit from Chris Messina's stash-carrying lawyer later, Marla is tied to a chair, staring death in the face. Painted in bubblegum hues, the cherry red of Marla's dress, the deep blue of Jennifer's stolen house, the garish purple pink of Roman's fondant fancies, and shot in oversaturated tones that reflect the artifice and plastic superficiality of this world, Blakeson's film has a slick, vacuum-sealed visual sheen, matched by a brittle synth-pop soundtrack. As with The Disappearance of Alice Creed, the genuinely disturbing elements of the opening act, Jennifer's incarceration, the vulnerability of the elderly, gradually give way to more generic, heisty thrills, with Blakeson reveling in wrong-footing the audience and upending our sympathies and allegiances in a manner that recalls the Wachowskis' debut feature Bound. Dinklage is particularly good as the sotto voce criminal who hates getting angry and who sucks a straw like a vampire sucking blood, a quality mirrored by his new nemesis. Yet this is very much Pike's show. She lends a touch of Nick Cage-like craziness to her portrayal of this too-far-gone girl. In a morally bankrupt world of horrible people doing horrible things, Marla and Roman are flip sides of the same coin, two poisonous snakes intertwined in a nest of vipers. The smooth, clockwork precision of the operation is at once stunning and terrifying. A doctor selects an elderly patient who looks like a good candidate for guardianship. A person of solid financial means who's not too old and infirm just yet, but possibly on the brink of dementia. A judge signs a court order asserting that this woman can no longer care for herself and needs someone else to step in and help. A legal guardian shows up at the woman's house with the document, saying she's in charge now and insisting she'll take good care of her property and finances. A driver whisks her away to a nursing home where the manager escorts her to a private room, promising she'll be treated like a queen. And once all the pieces are in place, the guardian is free to drain this unsuspecting woman of every penny she's got. The grift is impressive in I Care a Lot, writer-director Jay Blakeson's pitch black comedy. You've got to say that much for it. But it's also so infuriating that you probably couldn't stomach watching the whole thing, were it not for the riveting lead performance from Rosamund Pike. Blakeson, whose previous films include the stylish mystery The Disappearance of Alice Creed, as well as the derivative dystopian YA thriller The Fifth Wave, has said he was inspired and enraged by stories he read about predatory guardians taking advantage of voiceless victims. Pike's Marla Grayson is the towering embodiment of unchecked avarice within a system that's ripe for exploitation. With her razor-sharp blonde bob, monochromatic suits, and ever-present vape pen, Marla is a woman driven by cold, hard ambition. That much would have been obvious without her opening voiceover, in which she justifies her scam. Playing fair is a joke invented by rich people to keep the rest of us poor. During a court hearing at the film's start, she argues in persuasive, clear-eyed fashion that she can more accurately assess what's in the best interest of her clients, because she has no skin in the game, unlike family members who are fraught with emotional baggage and financial expectations. To her, it's all transactional. So when she gets the news that one of her clients has died, she pulls his headshot off the wall where it hangs among dozens of others, wads it up and throws it in the trash without a drop of emotion. "I thought he had legs," remarks the doctor, Alicia Witt, who serves up her potential marks for a cut. But soon another possibility arises. A cherry, as they refer to a prime candidate, and the blasé cruelty in Blakeson's script is the point. It's meant to make us uncomfortable, and it's effective. Jennifer Peterson, Diane Wiest, has no kids, husband, or living family, and while she's suffering from the beginnings of borderline dementia, she's active and will likely be around for a long time. She's just a nice, normal old lady, totally functional, living an unremarkable life. But to Marla and Fran, Eiza González, her partner in business and romance, she's like a golden fucking goose. What these predators don't realize is that they've chosen the wrong prey this time, and that by kidnapping, imprisoning, and bilking this seemingly kindly retiree, they've angered some dangerous and violent people. Peter Dinklage is low-key chilling as a volatile Russian mobster with a proclivity for pastries, and Chris Messina has a tremendous scene as his smooth-talking lawyer who strides into Marla's office and tries to buy her off before resorting to threats. The snappy and increasingly intense exchange, with both actors matching each other barb for barb, is the film's highlight. Blakeson's come up with such an original idea here, and he's presented it in a way that's both slick and vivid. Sure, the blithe, parasitic nature of these characters is disturbing, but the verve of the storytelling on display keeps you hooked, as does the ever-versatile Pike. She's captivating in her confidence and her ability to outmaneuver everyone, every time. Marla is a despicable human being, and while you won't exactly find yourself rooting for her to succeed, you'll at least be curious as to whether she can pull off her most outlandish scheme yet. And then once we realize who Jennifer Peterson really is and who she's connected to, Wiest reveals a character who's hilariously sharp through the haze of medication she probably doesn't even need. "Don't get fooled by old people," Marla tells Fran as they discover the multitudes their latest ward contains. "Even sadistic, immoral assholes get old." But the detached, bemused tone that sustains the film for so long eventually gives way to actual feelings, to its detriment, as this dark comedy steadily turns just plain dark. Pike can do anything, and this is her juiciest role since Gone Girl. But I Care a Lot becomes less interesting when her character starts allowing emotions like fear to seep through. We don't need justification for Marla's heinous acts. Simply making her a monster makes a stronger point. And eventually she becomes superhuman in the face of real physical danger, which we're just supposed to go with, as if her scrappy, hungry nature makes her a survivor in every situation. But she does pull off a cool trick involving a knocked-out tooth and a jug of milk that may be useful someday. So if you learn anything at all from watching I Care a Lot, make sure it's this handy and wholesome tidbit. Bookended by towering stilettos and a guillotine blade bob, Marla Grayson, Rosamund Pike, strides through I Care a Lot with the icy confidence of the inveterate fraud. Her racket is guardianship, identifying powerless retirees, having them falsely declared mentally incompetent, and herself appointed their legal conservator. A network of enablers, including an unscrupulous doctor and an oblivious judge, grease the grift as Marla and her personal and business partner, Eiza González, happen upon Jennifer Diane Wiest. With a healthy nest egg and no apparent relatives, Jennifer is a cherry, and one chilling, all-too-believable sequence later, she has been secured in an assisted living facility and her considerable assets liquidated. Marla, however, is about to discover she has messed with the wrong old lady. An unexpectedly gripping thriller that seesaws between comedy and horror, I Care a Lot is cleverly written by the director Jay Blakeson and wonderfully cast. Marla is an almost cartoonish sociopath, and Pike leans into her villainy with unwavering bravado. And Wiest is sly perfection. Watch as Jennifer, drugged and smirking, spits an unprintable curse at her tormentor before putting her in a headlock. But it's the introduction of an inscrutable Russian gangster, Peter Dinklage, all cool intelligence and wounded puppy eyes, that gives Marla a worthy foil and the plot a reason to climax. With its ice-pick dialogue and gleefully ironic title, I Care a Lot is a slick, savage caper with roots in a real-world scam, as an episode of the Netflix series Dirty Money recounts. An overlong, somewhat mushy middle section made me fear Blakeson was losing his nerve. I was wrong. Watching Rosamund Pike slink and vape her way through crafty, cruel thriller I Care a Lot, a trail of acid in her wake, had me scratching my head over just who else could pull off such a specifically supernaturally savage performance. There can be something inherently unsettling about her otherworldly beauty, something that David Fincher deftly spotted and utilized in Gone Girl, where she combined brittle Upper East Side elegance with the ferocity of the shark from Jaws. She's not always picked the best projects since, often disappearing in films where she should be forcing her way to the front. But British writer-director Jay Blakeson, who broke out with another crafty thriller, The Disappearance of Alice Creed, before tailing off somewhat, has landed her with a doozy of a character here, a materialistic and morally vacant anti-hero. Heavy emphasis on the anti. Pike is Marla Grayson, a pristinely styled legal guardian who uses her position to steal from her elderly wards, a court-approved criminal, working tirelessly and ruthlessly with her girlfriend and partner in crime, Eiza González. A network of equally callous doctors and care home managers allows them to seamlessly operate without a hiccup. That is until a new mark threatens to unravel it all. Jennifer Diane Wiest is what they call a cherry, a cash cow waiting for them to forcefully milk every last dollar, made even easier by her lack of family. But after they strand her in a facility, the pair find that she has some important friends who won't take her new situation lying down. I Care a Lot is a bracingly heartless movie, the kind that will repel certain viewers, Blakeson leaving anything close to real humanity on the cutting room floor, offering us a parade of horrible people doing increasingly horrible things to each other. Marla and Fran find themselves up against a violent pack of gangsters who are more upfront about their vicious tactics, and a dangerous game begins between both sides, although we're well aware that there will never really be a true winner. What's most remarkable about Blakeson's devilish script is his careful avoidance of excess. It's a nasty film, but not one that feels the need to show off just how nasty it is. Like Pike's electric yet controlled performance, the bile is boiling under the surface, only occasionally seeping out. Too often when writers create acrid antiheroes such as Marla, they resort to overkill. So giddily proud of their monsters that they lose sight of the reality of the world around them. Rather than having Marla exhaustingly shock those she meets with sour and provocative quips, as characters like this often do, cut to jaw-on-the-floor reaction trailer moment, she smoothly and professionally glides from situation to situation, efficiently working the room in whatever way it demands, Blakeson realizing that a power player such as this can't afford to let her mask slip on the daily. We also see some love, or something resembling love, between her and Fran, and it's rare to see queerness so casually and coolly inserted into a thriller, a quiet victory the film doesn't need to make a big deal about. Marla is very clearly a movie character, styled and framed as such, yet she's one who sneakily plays by the rules of a very real framework. And while the inhumanity of those she works alongside might seem overplayed, Blakeson's idea originated from a Google rabbit hole of true stories telling of predatory guardians in the U.S. and the horrifying power they wield. He's not offering us a sweeping sermon on a corrupt system. His story is too laser-focused for that. But in Among the Gristle, there's a stinging reminder of how the elderly are undervalued and targeted. There's dark humor here, but in detailing Marla's treatment of her latest target, her predicament is played for horror, and Blakeson sensitively shines a light on the Kafkaesque nightmare that many are faced with. As the stakes are raised like a cornered animal, Marla's claws come out even further, and her abhorrent bullying of an elderly woman makes us question just what we want and expect for such an audaciously vile protagonist. But Blakeson isn't interested in making it easy for anyone, not for his characters and not for his audience. Marla's backstory is elegantly slight, as are her real motivations. There's a half-hearted attempt on her part at explaining away her criminality as revenge against the men who mistreated her, but Blakeson doesn't let her out of the deep swamp she's swimming in that easily. There's also a killer throwaway comment about her mother, one of the film's most darkly funny moments. Pike is astonishingly good, tearing into her role with the same icy menace that made her Oscar-nominated performance in Gone Girl so indelible and like the script she's working from. There's such restraint with her venom that it makes her all the more terrifying. She shares some knife-edge back and forths with an affecting and not to be fucked with Wiest, as well as Peter Dinklage, starring as her main nemesis, both trying desperately to compete against an all-time high scorer. It's a little overlong, sagging slightly in the last act, and Blakeson does rely on a repetitive and sometimes overbearing Reznor and Ross Light score, but all is mostly forgiven as he caps it off with a delicious final scene. Going into this year's Toronto Film Festival without a distributor, I Care a Lot deserves a swift, big-money pickup. It's a major, much-needed win for both Pike and Blakeson, a caustic little treat for those of us who prefer our stories with a spoonful of salt. After Gone Girl, there was never any thought about that, really. But really, I Care a Lot is confirmation that Rosamund Pike can do anything. I know I was supposed to hate Marla Grayson in this film, and yet, even with all the evil things she did, I couldn't stop but enjoy everything she was doing. She was an awful human being, but Rosamund Pike made her so damn entertaining that I couldn't help myself. It's a testament to her and her work, a testament to the casting, but also the script, because I Care a Lot gave Pike a lot to do, and she devours it and gives us her best performance since Amy Dunn. Let's first address the criticism this film has gotten even. When the first trailer arrived, many started criticizing the film for the subject matter. The subject of conservatorship has been in the media lately, and many saw the film as making light of the subject and criticized it before even watching it. The truth is, The movie never makes light of it. It never makes it look like a good thing the other way around. Marla Grayson is not a good person. She even says it herself. What she does it evil. Many acknowledge in the film even. But she is living in a world where the villains thrive. She is striving for the American dream, and she sees what she does as the only way to do it. We are never supposed to feel like she is a good person. The things she does are despicable. But at the same time, the film isn't about conservatorship. It's a crime movie, a dark comedy thriller that happens to have its main character working as a legal guardian and taking advantage of people. I understand why many criticize the idea, because it is a horrible thing. But the thing is, why jump the gun and say how horrible it is before even having seen it? I Care a Lot is a slick and smart crime dark comedy that takes nothing for granted. I don't usually enjoy films that sometimes rely on editing and visuals to elevate the film. Vice was the prime example, where editing was so heavy that it overtook the film. But I Care a Lot knows how to edit his film to a rhythm that works for the film that it is. It's slick and never feels like the pace of the film is anything but what it needs to be. Jay Blakeson, The Disappearance of Alice Creed, The Fifth Wave, wrote and directed a film that felt fresh while also taking elements that we knew. It might have been a crime movie where things can be predictable, but he was able to make it his own. Too often in films, queer characters are made a big deal out of it. Their queerness has to be explained to everyone around them. It has to be mentioned over and over again. They aren't just allowed to be. I Care a Lot never tries to do that. Marla and Fran are just a couple. They never say it to others. They never mention it. They just exist. Everyone in their lives knows that they are together, and the film never feels the need to tell us. Instead, shows us. They exist together. The chemistry between Rosamund Pike and Eiza González bleeds through the screen. Eiza González is from Dusk Till Dawn, the series Baby Driver. Fran also gets to be more than just the girlfriend. She has her own skill set that is invaluable to Marla and her operation. It's a duo that needs each other, and everything they do in the end is for one another. It's refreshing to see where their sexuality isn't at the center of everything. Instead, they are just allowed to live just like any other couple. And then there's Peter Dinklage, Game of Thrones. I don't want to give anything away about his character and his actions, but the moment he appears on the screen, the tone of the film shifts, and all of a sudden you find yourself in the film I Care a Lot really wants to be. He and Pike create this dynamic that is so toxic and yet so entertaining. He never plays the character too big or too small, owning every second he is on screen. Pike might get the big moments and a lot of the humor, but he plays her straight men so well. He gets to be evil in a different way we are used to seeing from him. I also did laugh a lot at his little man bun. This is Dinklage in his best outing since the early seasons of Game of Thrones. It is so against type for him that it works. And maybe that it's what this movie does so well. Cast people against type in roles we maybe didn't them before. And yet, every casting in this just works. I Care a Lot might get criticized by some because of the job the main character has. And yet, if that is the only thing that is stopping you from watching it, I am sorry for you. Because I Care a Lot is a slick and entertaining crime movie. I was screaming, stressing, laughing, and had me gasping for air by the end. It gives us Rosamund Pike at her best since Gone Girl, and uses everyone in the cast perfectly. Jay Blakeson created a feature that I can't wait to rewatch and revisit with family and friends when it comes out, and one that I wish I had had the chance to watch in theaters, because this would have been so fun to watch with a crowd reacting all at the same time. In two entirely unrelated ways, I Care a Lot perfectly showcases two of the foremost aesthetic limitations facing contemporary cinema. The simpler one to talk about is that it's just really damn gross looking, with the kind of chintzy digital cinematography that has come to define so many direct-to-streaming films. It has been divvied up between Netflix and Amazon in most of the world. It's so crisp that even the soft focus feels unpleasantly sharp, and there's a whole lot of shallow focus in I Care a Lot. The colors all have a kind of unpleasant bacterial quality, and it's all overlit. The more complicated one is that This is a pretty fine example of the tonal flattening that happens when film storytelling gets too hung up on sand off all the edges, save the cat-style screenwriting that is obsessed with giving the audience what they claim to want rather than what they need. I Care a Lot is a film about unspeakably vicious sociopathic people. There's literally not a single named character who is likable in any significant respect. The bulk of the film is about these horrible monsters engaged in a battle of wits to see who can get the upper hand over the other through any dirty means possible, and so much the better if it involves violence, all of which, to be clear, is pretty great, and greater still since the cast bringing these people to life is so great at their jobs. Rosamund Pike, no stranger to playing immoral vipers. She's channeling her Gone Girl performance and improving upon it. She's not straining nearly as much against her American accent this time. Is Marla Grayson, a woman who has made a pretty comfortable living for herself by manipulating the legal system to put herself in power over well-to-do senior citizens, cutting their family members out of the equation as she becomes their legal guardian. From this position, she uses corrupt nursing home administrators to keep her charges harmlessly doped up while she pays her own shell company handsome sums of money. The latest of these is a certain Jennifer Peterson, Diane Wiest, who is perfectly fine on her own, but with hardly any effort. Marla is able to take over her life and then completely destroy it, in the process discovering that Jennifer had an improbably large cache of precious gems hiding in a safe deposit box. And this, we discover soon thereafter, is because Jennifer had a secret connection to a Russian gangster named Roman Lunyov, Peter Dinklage, whom the world at large has imagined to be dead these last couple of years. And he's not afraid to use all the powers at the disposal of a Russian mobster who has successfully faked his own death to make Marla's life unendurable agony. For a good 75 minutes, this works. Sometimes extraordinarily well, sometimes merely as a solid diversion. Though with two war horses like Pike and Dinklage giving everything they've got, even as a solid diversion, I Care a Lot is an awful lot of fun. And that's to say nothing of the rest of the cast. Wiest, of course, but also Eiza González as Fran, Marla's somewhat less venomous business and life partner, Nicholas Logan as a twitchy gangster, Alicia Witt as a venal doctor, and especially Chris Messina bringing wolf-like hunger to the role of a menacing mob lawyer. There's not a single weak link in its cast, with writer-director Jay Blakeson getting everyone lined up and facing in the same direction of mild camp, leading to a slightly arch, not exactly funny tone that lasts for most of the first hour. The film's pleasures lie in watching selfish geniuses manipulate systems and situations entirely for the sake of accruing power over other humans. It's disreputable and ugly and has a nice sharp bite to it. There are some vague gestures towards social satire in all of this, with the suggestion that this is what happens when people are dropped into a world that knows only economic exploitation and reduces all people to their status as objects to be commodified. Though this isn't something it pursues very seriously, even less is it a serious condemnation of the shameful way that the medical profession turns senior patients into faceless cogs in a financial machine. It seems at best to be the cover for the film to be able to do the fun work of indulging in pure wickedness for the sake of it. That starts to point us in the direction of the problem. We are living through a period where movies are required to be nice, relatable, admirable, and there comes a point, again, right about 75 minutes in, where I Care a Lot very visibly loses its nerve. It decides, quite out of nowhere, that it doesn't just want Marla to be a revolting gargoyle who takes mustache-twirling evil joy in sucking the life and money out of harmless old people. It wants her to be an anti-hero, which isn't precisely the same thing as the villain from whose perspective we watch long passages of the movie. It needs us to at least somewhat root for her and get where she's coming from. And even this isn't quite enough for Blakeson. He also tries to nudge her in the direction of being sympathetic in tiny little ways. This cannot work, of course. There's no unshooting the bullet of how mercilessly she abuses helpless old people and the raw joy she takes in doing so. especially when one of those old people is as inherently likable as Diane Wiest. And so the film starts flailing about in search of a tone it can pursue for more than a few minutes. This isn't just a failure of the film's second half, to be fair. Almost as soon as it gets started, I Care a Lot is biting off more than it can chew. A dark comedy about a con woman exploiting loopholes in the legal system turns into a mystery that turns into a gangster thriller. And that's only getting us to that 75-minute mark. The film completely loses track of Wiest and obliges Pike to reinvent her character so many times that even though she's doing exactly what it requires of her at every turn, she's completely at a loss to make a consistent character out of all the different tonal, narrative, and thematic impulses the film demands of her. A monstrous sociopath, a badass girl boss, a satiric indictment of badass girl bosses, a breezy caper film con artist. It's a busy mess of a film, and as long as it maintains a core of dark, sarcastic energy, it's able to keep all of that patched together. But it eventually drops the sarcasm and just holds on to the darkness, and the patch ceases to hold. And that's not even touching the inordinately contrived bullshit of the last 10 minutes. It's odd to say of a film that's such nasty fun for such a large amount of its running time that it's a failure. But I Care a Lot collapses in so many ways in its last act that the whole experience is retroactively tainted by it. I'm starting to worry that contemporary filmmakers don't know how to write female villains. That's my main takeaway from Jay Blakeson's I Care a Lot. The film follows a duplicitous, sociopathic female character, Rosamund Pike's professional guardian, Marla Grayson, but doesn't have the courage to make you hate the obviously evil woman at its center. It's the latest in a recent spat of pop culture projects that seems to imply that female characters cannot be consciously evil. These films include the Disney revisionist takes on female villains like Maleficent and Cruella de Vil, which transform their monstrous villains into sympathetic anti-heroes, as well as popular TV shows like Netflix's Ratched, and even the wildly popular novel and musical Wicked. The more popular entertainment we get like these aforementioned projects, the more I feel that what is often touted as feminist entertainment is actually condescending and muddled storytelling. It's a disappointing turn, as I Care a Lot has a killer hook in its story of a woman entrapping vulnerable and wealthy seniors and strip mining their estates for all they're worth. The concept plays into the fact, now too obvious in our COVID world, that Western society mistreats senior citizens and is too prone to incentivize and privatize social care as a solution to that mistreatment, leaving itself vulnerable to predators that would manipulate the system. It also makes a clever comment on how a female sociopath is best able to navigate gendered professional classes and manipulate the feminine industry of senior care. It even has the good fortune to star Rosamund Pike, who played perhaps the best female villain of the past decade in David Fincher's Gone Girl. Pike has a good time in the role, leveraging her icy beauty and verbal dexterity to craft a vision of girl boss as predator. But Jay Blakeson, who writes and directs, isn't comfortable in really letting you hate Pike's Marla. It's a strange reticence, as the opening moments of the film introduce Marla as this unabashedly predatory individual. In voiceover, we hear her break down the world into predators and prey and proudly declare that she's the former, willing to cut every corner, skirt every moral reservation, and do absolutely anything to make money and favor herself. Manipulating a sympathetic judge in society's disinterest in old people is an efficient means to her ends. Marla isn't asking for sympathy, and in the early moments of the film, Blakeson isn't interested in giving it to her. He's comfortable simply depicting her awesome efficiency and allowing us to be disgusted with her, while equally wondering if we could ever be smart and ruthless enough to get away with something similar. It's an approach borrowed from satires like American Psycho, where you're lured into being impressed with Patrick Bateman's vanity at the same time you're sickened by it. But somewhere along the way, the film pivots and starts to present Marla as the dogged and perhaps even justified anti-hero who deserves our sympathy over her antagonists in the film. After putting a wealthy elderly woman, Diane Wiest, in a nursing home against her will, Marla finds herself up against the woman's gangster son, Peter Dinklage, whom she didn't know she had. The son is adamant on freeing his mother from the home and taking revenge on Marla, forcing a confrontation between two evil figures. Casting Dinklage is another case of Blakeson having strong actors at his disposal, but he might have been mistaken in trying to frame Dinklage's gangster as a more malevolent force than Marla. Sure, the character is rich and powerful, and eager to inflict as much pain on her as possible, but Dinklage is an actor known for playing prickly outcasts with a lovable and sympathetic side. He's Tyrion Lannister, for Chris sakes, the most lovable drunkard genius in modern TV history. So when midway through the film, after we've watched Dinklage's gangster try and fail to intimidate Marla and secure the release of his mother, which is frankly admirable in the context of the film, I Care a Lot starts to shift to a tale of survival. And when a figure is fighting for survival, in this particular case a woman, we're inclined to be inherently sympathetic. How sympathizing with a sociopath forwards the film's ostensible goal of satirizing the ruthless nature of American society is beyond me. But it's nevertheless the tactic the film takes two-thirds of the way through the runtime, which guts the social commentary. After stacking the deck against Marla, it shifts to trying to humanize her through her relationship with her girlfriend, Fran, Eiza González, and to play on our instinctual protective reaction against depictions of women in danger on screen. We watch her narrowly avoid death only to return to the loving arms of Fran and plot revenge on the stupid men who failed to kill her. And I wondered whether I was watching a completely different film than the one I started. Frankly, the entire manipulative approach is distasteful. For one, it tries to weaponize the viewer's sympathy for same-sex couples on screen, still a rarity for movies not explicitly about the gay experience, reducing Fran to a mere accessory for Marla. It also seems to indicate that although Marla is a sociopath, i.e. a person defined by their antisocial behavior and inability to care about others, she's still capable of being a good and loving partner, which makes us question the whole sociopathic approach. And then there are the narrative convolutions that start to pile up to manufacture an ending where Marla is able to turn the tables on the gangsters and show that she truly is the predator among predators. I'm not usually one to gripe about narrative implausibilities on screen, but after watching a gangster concoct elaborate plans to kill people that inevitably go awry when a bullet to the head and a chain tied to a cinder block would have done the job, I start to lose patience. It's not that I Care a Lot is haphazardly written, though, or shot like a bad straight-to-streaming film with all close-ups and indistinct backgrounds. There's a good idea here and some competent filmmaking behind it. Sure, its formal approach largely mimics the work of David Fincher. The cinematography emphasizes the elegant yet cold architectural world that Marla inhabits. And the music from Mark Canham is trying really hard to be Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross's score for The Social Network. Trying to ape a great filmmaker is rarely a bad approach to this kind of cynical entertainment. No, what sinks I Care a Lot is simply its lack of conviction. It pivots away from satirizing the ways that American culture is able to monetize and pervert even the most commendable of social care and towards showcasing a kind of girl power revenge tale. Then it even lacks the conviction of going all in on the reformative approach to Marla. The ending features a comeuppance that would be right at home in the era of the Hays Code. Perhaps the ending is intended as another comment on how American society cannot let a woman get away with what a man can. That sexist double standards are true even for sociopaths. But it's halfway between commentary and tragedy, left adrift between a satisfying execution of either. Thus, it's unable to provide us satisfaction at Marla's defeat, since it hedged against our antipathy. But neither can it truly subvert the genre's expectations by so readily playing into them. It all comes down to the fact that Marla is the object of both satire and tragedy. In a film that wants us to believe there are only predators or prey in the world, it concludes that its protagonist is a lethal blend of the two, muddling the entire thesis of the work and leaving us wondering what the hell the film was really satirizing in the first place. I Care a Lot is a new Netflix film about a crooked court-ordered caretaker, Marla, Rosamund Pike, who runs a legal but disgusting operation of mining resources of her elderly clients and keeping them in a nursing facility, also in on her plot to rob said client. Her luck runs dry after she eyes a woman, Diane Weist, who, unknown to Marla, is in deep with the criminal underbelly. Now Marla will have to face off against an equally crafty and terrifying gangster Roman, Peter Dinklage, to be able to get her money and run away with her girlfriend Fran, Eiza González, before her time runs out. Seeing some of the reactions online and the audience score on Rotten Tomatoes, I'm both surprised and not surprised by the reactions. To look at this film as a feminist propaganda film is severely undercutting the story, performances, and excellent directing by Jay Blakeson. This is a film with nobody to root for, but with rich characters that you are mesmerized or horrified by. I'll admit I am a sucker for films with unlikable characters with drive and determination, and this film reminded me of some of my favorites like Nightcrawler, Whiplash, or The Wolf of Wall Street. Rosamund Pike is a showstopper. Her dedication to the character, her physicality in the role, and the pure hatred and admiration you have for her tenacity is a delicate tightrope that she glides through with ease. I loved Peter Dinklage and his character. Please put him in more films, because anytime he is in a film, the movie is always better for it. Perhaps a generic villain, but the way he plays the character makes it a fun performance nonetheless. Please ignore the audience rating on Rotten Tomatoes. It's not been taken over by internet trolls upset about a film they likely didn't even watch. These are sad, pathetic people who have no opinions other than whatever their politics dictate. If there is anything you take away from my review, is that you should watch I Care a Lot, but go in knowing two things. One, it's a dark comedy. You aren't supposed to feel good about the laughs you may find in the story, nor are you meant to root and agree with any of the characters. Look at the story and performances, and I promise you'll have a good time. I Care a Lot is a thriller with the sort of devil-may-care attitude that works as long as the filmmakers show trust in the audience to go along with them. Featuring a strong performance from Rosamund Pike, who channels the sociopathic iciness that earned her an Oscar nomination for Gone Girl, this is a film that turns the dial in a similar direction for the sake of something more in line with the crime comedies stemming from ways that use the system to feed one's greed, in addition to empowerment. Pike stars as Marla Grayson, a professional court-appointed legal guardian who is running a successful scam involving her elderly clients. With help from a doctor, Alicia Witt, Marla and her partner Fran, Eiza González, are clued in on ailing older folks who would benefit from being placed into a retirement home. Once relocated, Marla can control all aspects of their lives, specifically anything involving their financials. However, things become exponentially more complicated when their latest client, Jennifer Peterson, Diane Weist, turns out to have connections placing Marla in the crosshairs of very bad people. I Care a Lot comes from writer-director Jay Blakeson, who puts viewers on a ride with this film. Thanks to an extended amount of time setting up Marla, her business, and the initial situation with Weist Peterson, one could initially believe this film to be a satire. There's enough dark comedy taking place to fuel the idea of a confident woman gaming the courts in such a way that these terrible actions would eventually creep over into commentary on the justice system. With so many different people assisting Marla in her schemes, this is a confidence game fun enough to play along with, even while recognizing how awful these people are. However, the other shoe eventually drops, and the film peels back layers, revealing what's really going on with Weist's character. While it's a shame Weist isn't actually given a lot to do, as the two-time Oscar winner is quite capable of running laps around most of this cast, the arrival of Peter Dinklage's crime boss character and Chris Messina's impeccably dressed smarmy lawyer take the film into a different level. The movie is no less humorous, but now features an added sense of danger. One can't help but be reminded of some ensemble crime films from the 2000s, similarly laced with humor. Matthew Vaughn's Layer Cake in particular comes to mind. That said, while that film, which featured a pre-James Bond Daniel Craig, wanted to get by on its excess of style, I Care a Lot is far more reliant on the skills of a former Bond girl. Pike goes toe-to-toe with Dinklage and Messina in verbal sparring matches, allowing the film to effectively simmer with tension. It's these moments where the film shines brightest, as the characters can show the wheels turning in their heads while also trying not to reveal their hand to their opponent. When sudden bursts of action occurred, I was less amused, although I did enjoy how Blakeson seemed to approach the film from the perspective of constantly cornering Marla, leading to some creative ways to move her out of immediate danger. That's the sort of thriller material I can imagine makes for great airplane novels, let alone films that really know how to hinge key plot beats on a level of suspense. That in mind, there is only so much to get out of this story when it comes to a movie stacking its latter half with twists, let alone some moralizing, as if an audience needs some form of relatability to better deal with the characters they are following. To be fair, I Care a Lot doesn't try to sit anyone down and preach at them. This is a film meant to be enjoyed for all the ways we can see bad people act terribly. Even Marla's backstory is mostly withheld, leading us to believe she's moved on from previous discretions and developed a new version of herself, whose sole goal is to win and tear apart anyone who gets in her way. Of course, when you make a film focused on anti-heroes, finding a proper out means either making some concessions or going headfirst into the deep end of the black hole of a soul we're supposed to think best describes these characters. I found I Care a Lot to be a film wanting to have it both ways, letting justice prevail in some sense while resolving the various plot machinations in a manner that is emotionally satisfying for the central characters. It ultimately puts the film in a position where it can't entirely support all that it is trying to juggle. But while I was on this twisty ride, I cared a good deal. Seldom has a film's title been more thoroughly doused in darkest irony than Jay Blakeson's breathtakingly vicious thriller, I Care a Lot. In a role that makes riveting use of her chilly poise, Rosamund Pike brings crisp efficiency and dead-eyed amorality to a legal conservator scamming defenseless seniors out of their assets as she and her co-conspirators take control of their lives, shutting out pesky family members whenever necessary. At a time when governments in many countries seem to be abandoning traditional watchdog responsibilities and turning a blind eye to corporate malfeasance, the phrase "ward of the state" here takes on an alarming new meaning. Stories of elder abuse and companies exploiting the weaknesses of people whose failing physical or mental faculties leave them unable to take care of themselves in the eyes of the courts are an ugly fact of contemporary reality. So your enjoyment of this slick, well-crafted crime caper might depend on your ability to separate thoughts of your own aging parents or grandparents from the scenario. The movie is either delectably wicked or dyspeptically sour. You decide. I went back and forth while watching, though there was never a moment when I wasn't glued, even if some of the plotting in the script by Blakeson, the disappearance of Alice Creed, the fifth wave, becomes a stretch as Pike's character, Marla Grayson, shifts from fooling the gullible courts into outmaneuvering a ruthless crime boss and his deadly flunkies. Some audiences may also find it off-putting that the characters across the board are pretty much irredeemable, or in the case of the family court judge Marla, effortlessly dupes. Stupid. Marla might be the perfect villainous anti-hero for the age of Trump, who of course has made no secret of his contempt for losers. Over sunny slow-mo opening footage of smiling elder care workers distributing medication to gaga patients, Marla informs us there's no such thing as good people. Playing fair is a joke invented by the rich to keep the rest of us poor. Revealing that she has been poor and it doesn't agree with her, Marla explains that there are two types of people, predators and prey, lions and lambs. My name is Marla Grayson and I am no lamb. I am a fucking lioness. We first glimpse her from behind in the courtroom of Judge Lomax, Isaiah Whitlock Jr., her silvery blonde bob so sharp it looks like it could draw blood. But Marla can turn on the guardian angel's sincerity as required. She doubles down on her position as Feldstrom, Macon Blair, the adult son of one of her wards, fights a non-visitation order preventing him from seeing his mother, whose home and assets have been auctioned off by Marla, ostensibly to fund the old woman's care. When Feldstrom confronts her outside the court, smugly preparing to take off with her business and romantic partner Fran, Eiza González, Marla reveals her glacial true self. It's also here that the script introduces its blunt feminist subtext that men don't have exclusive domain over playing dirty, yet nothing stings them worse than being beaten by a woman. Marla's company, Grayson Guardianship, is a major enterprise with stylish offices and a wall of headshots in the executive suite showing the status of her many wards and their cash yield. The news that one of them has died unexpectedly brings annoyance, since Marla expected to keep bilking him for at least another 6 years. Now I have to cash him out, turn over everything to his inheritors. What a fucking waste. But it also creates opportunity. With the sudden vacancy of a plum room at a pricey facility whose sleazy administrator Sam Rice, Damian Young, is in on the scam. Dr. Karen Amos, Alicia Witt, is also part of the operation, with her hand out for a cut. She steers fresh cash cows in Marla's direction, fudging their medical assessments as necessary. In Jennifer Peterson, Diane Wiest, a well-heeled woman who downsized for retirement and is sitting on a fortune, Karen believes she has found a cherry, a patient with no known family and vast assets to be tapped, including a large house in an upscale neighborhood. Gumshoe Fran's investigation indicates that Jennifer fits the mold. Marla, Rosamund Pike, is a ruthless con artist who preys upon the elderly. The film opens with her successfully defending a case, draining an elderly woman of her assets, freedom, and access to her sole relative. Marla parasitically installs herself in the lives of her clients as their court-mandated guardian, allowing her to take complete control of their lives. This allows her to completely destroy them. However, she bites off more than she can swallow when she decides to victimize Jennifer Peterson, Diane Wiest, whose violent mafia son, Peter Dinklage, will pose a threat to her vampiric enterprise. I Care a Lot is a film to get the blood pumping, partially due to the tense suspense sequences that are deftly handled by writer-director Jay Blakeson, but mainly because this is a film intended to make you angry. The central con is infuriating, as it sees our main characters preying upon the weakest members of our society, people we know are regularly preyed upon by sharks and villains. If the film intended for us to feel anything other than pure hatred for those responsible for these injustices, it would be truly misguided. Consequently, we spend the film's runtime waiting for justice and growing more and more frustrated as it is teased but withheld. The drama unfolds and threatens to punish our characters for their sins, but as their persecutors prove to be just as villainous as their quarry, there's no satisfaction to be found. There are no objective or morally sound figures to even voice disapproval of these horrific actions. This is, of course, all deliberate. The film is a scathing critique of the American dream and the concept of individual enterprise. Marla is looking out for herself and profiting from a system that profits from the disempowerment of elderly men and women. Perhaps the most reprehensible character in the entire film is the judge, convincingly portrayed by Isaiah Whitlock Jr., who has nothing to gain from this con, but is an essential part of its operation. He is motivated solely by his own indifference. It is this indifference that allows the ghouls at the film's heart to ply their dark trade. But the film and its message would be easier to digest if any of its characters were relatable or sympathetic. We have no way into Marla as a character. She might have adopted this horrific lifestyle out of necessity, but the film does not adequately demonstrate the hardships she is fleeing, nor does it suggest any remorse. She is part of a loving relationship with Eiza González Fran, but she herself is completely compliant in the crimes committed. She's either indifferent to the suffering of those she helps prey upon or equally scornful of the weak. Their relationship is that of two parasites. There is, however, a gendered aspect to the morality of the film. Marla insinuates that she has experienced poverty, parental abuse, and perhaps crucially, mistreatment by men. She characterizes the only societal criticism we see leveled at her in the film as that of a frustrated man hitting out a woman. Is Marla's villainy merely an expression of her complete disempowerment as a woman? Left with no morally justifiable options, she becomes a monster to survive a man's world? Some kind of well-meaning foil would make this point easier to swallow. Otherwise, it's just a very bitter and unpleasant take on empowerment. Perhaps this is all an issue of tone. This is clearly a black comedy and a satire of American statutory care, but the savagery of the central con and the ruthless efficiency of the Marla riles the audience too much. It's too provocatively worrying to be funny. Were the film more overtly comedic, it would also forgive some of the plot contrivances, especially in the third act. These awkward machinations actually undermine the satirical aspect of the film. Surely you'd need to get more than a crooked doctor and a greedy care home manager to operate a con like this. It rings sadly true, but also feels like an exaggeration, which does a disservice to the film's central premise. The film would not be anywhere near as powerful if not for the lead performance from Rosamund Pike. Her insincere smile and vacant gaze is a perfect false face that drops in a moment to reveal the truly callous and vindictive beast within. The closest the film comes to humanizing her are entirely down to the strength of Pike's performance. There's a heartbreak and vulnerability buried deep with her cynicism that the film leaves tragically unexplored. She is supported by a captivatingly sinister turn from Peter Dinklage and a wonderfully multifaceted performance by Diane Weist. In a film that doesn't quite succeed at what it wants to be, the performances are all assured and engaging. I Care a Lot is not an easy watch. In fact, I do hope to never see it again. It has disturbed me more effectively than most horror films, but I can't say it wasn't deeply affecting and tense. It's shaken me out of a malaise that is far too easily adopted in these tedious times. The film got me angry. Angry about the indifference of systems intended to protect the vulnerable, angry about the cruelty of con artists, and deeply afraid of a model of capitalism that generates and benefits monsters. It's a very effective film, but you may not like what it's trying to do to you. The whole thing, were it not for the riveting lead performance from Rosamund Pike Blakeson, whose previous films include the stylish mystery The Disappearance of Alice Creed, as well as the derivative dystopian thriller The Fifth Wave, has said he was inspired and enraged by stories he read about predatory guardians taking advantage of voiceless victims. Pike's Mara Grayson is the towering embodiment of unchecked avarice within a system that's ripe for exploitation, with her razor-sharp blonde bob, monochromatic suits, and ever-present vape pen. Mara is a woman driven by cold hard ambition that much would have been obvious without her opening voiceover, in which she justifies her scam playing fair, is a joke invented by rich people to keep the rest of us poor during a court hearing. At the film start, she argues in persuasive, clear-eyed fashion that she can more accurately assess what's in the best interest of her clients, because she has no skin in the game. Unlike family members who are fraught with emotional baggage and financial expectations to her, it's all transactional. So when she gets the news that one of her clients has died, she pulls his headshot off the wall where it hangs among dozens of others, wads it up, and throws it in the trash without a drop of emo. "I thought he had legs," remarks the Dr. Alicia Witt, who serves up her potential marks for a cut. But soon another possibility arises, a cherry, as they refer to a prime candidate, and the blasé cruelty in Blakeson's script is the point. It's make us uncomfortable, and it's effective. Jennifer Peterson, Diane. West has no kids, husband, or living family, and while she's suffering from the beginnings of borderline dementia, she's active and will likely be around for a long time. She's just a nice, normal old lady, totally functional, living an unremarkable life. But to Mara and Fran Eiza González, her partner in business and romance, she's like a golden F*** king goose. What these predators don't realize is that they've chosen the wrong prey this time, and that by kidnapping, imprisoning, and biling this seemingly kindly retiree, they've angered some dangerous and violent people. Peter Dinklage is low-key, chilling as a volatile Russian mobster with a proclivity for pastries, and Christina has a tremendous scene as his smooth-talking lawyer who strides into Mara's office and tries to buy her off before resorting to threats. The snappy and increasingly intense exchange with both actors matching each other. Barb for barb is the film's highlight. Blondes come up with such an original idea here, and he's presented it in a way that's both slick and vivid. Sure, the BL parasitic nature of these characters is disturbing, but the verve of the storytelling on display keeps you hooked, as does the ever-versatile Pike. She's captivating in her confidence and her ability to outmaneuver everyone every time. Mara is a despicable human being, and while you won't exactly find yourself rooting for her to succeed, you'll at least be curious as to whether she can pull off her most outlandish scheme yet. And then once we realize who Jennifer Peterson really is and who she's connected to, which reveals a character who's hilariously sharp through the haze of medication she probably doesn't even need. Don't get fooled by old people, Mara tells Fran as they discover the multitudes their latest word art contains even sadistic, immoral get old. But the detached, abused tone that sustains the film for so long eventually gives way to actual feelings to its detriment, as this dark comedy steadily turns just plain dark. Pike can do anything, and this is her juiciest role since Gone Girl, but I Care a Lot becomes less interesting when her character starts allowing emotions like fear to seep through. We don't need justification for Mara's heinous acts. Simply making her a monster makes a stronger point, and eventually she becomes superhuman in the face of real physical danger, which we're just supposed to go with, as if her scrappy, hungry nature makes her a survivor in every situation. More detail. Before watching this movie, I've been seeing the poster around quite a bit. I finally became active on Letterboxd, especially in the lists where I was scouring for films that had stronger female leads. I didn't read the plot of this movie at all before going into it, but the poster particularly intrigued me ever since watching the Neon Demon. Neon tones become a mysterious sense of danger. That's all I got before starting this film a day after my birthday, and oh man, I was right. This film truly is a wild ride, and let's get right into it. Our main character in this film is Mara Grayson, a conwoman who convinces the legal system to give her legal guardianship of vulnerable old people once she's their guardian. She locks them away in elderly facilitates and steals everything they own, cashing in on the profit of their assets and properties. The motion of this film is set once one of the men she's a guardian for dies, and she discovers a new prospective client. She's a wealthy, supposedly independent woman who seems like the key person to exploit, and they do so. But then it turns out this woman is heavily connected to the mafia, something characters seem highly unaware of from the beginning. She seems like a normal old woman who's been convinced she is no longer stable, thus needing a guardian. And then the puzzle pieces slowly begin to come together, shifting this from a more comedic light tone into thriller territory. This film has its moments. It's a comedic thriller, and there's some pretty good beats of comedy in this film. I genuinely cracked some smiles at some, despite the heaviness of the topics. This is a film about exploitation and late-stage capitalism, and then it turns into a gay film. I absolutely screamed once we got into were lesbians part of the film, because I did not see this coming at all. I genuinely thought they were just boss and assistant, and then they weren't. There's some hole in the scripts. But I thought it was fine, since the actual film managed to captivate me and keep my attention going. It's a black comedy. It's a queer film, and it's got some decent cinematic elements to it. The acting, too, is also quite good. Rosamund Pike as Mara Grayson is the star of the show, despite her being highly unethical in her career. It's established right from the start that she is a con woman, so this isn't really a spoiler. Her outfits, her look, and her confidence, all is absolutely killer. I absolutely wanted to be her throughout the film, minus the shitty career move. I recently cut my hair as short as hers in the same exact style, and I absolutely want to emulate her going forward. As she says, am I a lamb or I a lion? I was like, oh no, this foreshadowing. I came out of this movie with a crush on Rosamund Pike and her assistant, both played by Eiza González, and appreciation for the wardrobe efforts that came into this movie, and a love for the shots. The cinematography was great in this one, y'all, especially with the ambience created by light as well as sound decisions. I thought this was a great, highly entertaining movie, and I recommend it for the masses. Pike was the star of the show, but the acting was solid all around at the end of the day. It also shows how the real world tends to be the unethical get on top through dodgy means, which seems insane, but it's reality. Did you know that there is a scam in this country that puts elderly people in the hands of court-appointed guardians, elderly people who are deemed incapable of taking care of themselves, even though they're perfectly fine? A judge gives them over to a guardian who tosses them in a nursing home, then takes control of their assets, and oftentimes don't allow the person's family members to be in contact with them. I was appalled when I first learned about this in Netflix's Dirty Money. I have grandparents, a mom who is getting older in age and a heart. So yeah, learning this upset me and angered me. So am I supposed to cheer for Rosamund Pike's character? And I care a lot due to how shrewd and clever she is. Don't get me wrong. Pike plays this cunning character perfectly. She perfectly displays the soulless cretins who prey upon the weak. If you thought Pike was smart in Gone Girl, she's even further ahead, and I care a lot. The difference is I felt a slight connection to Pike in Gone Girl. While her actions were extreme, you still couldn't help but be in awe at what she planned in that film, and I care a lot. I genuinely felt anger at her character. Netflix's I Care a Lot stars Pike as the con woman. Grayson, who with the help of her girlfriend Eiza González, scam courts to give guardianship of perfectly healthy elderly patients to her so she can take their house, their money, and prevent the family from getting to them. Mara and Fran think they have the perfect old lady to scam next, but when they get involved with Jennifer Peterson, Diane West, they are way out of their league. While I could say that no one is a protagonist in this film, Peter Dinklage plays the antagonist to Pike's main character. I always enjoy seeing Dinklage, and I think playing a gangster suits him. Dinklage has the ability to utterly convince that he is a scary mother F. A.C. Sayre, who will literally put you in the ground if you don't do what he wants. While both Dinklage as Roman and Mara are used to getting what they want, they find worthy adversaries in each other. There were several times I thought one would win over the other, and the conclusion between them was probably the most likely scenario. I know that I am too emotionally invested in the main message of the film, which was glossed over. For the most part, it was used as a catalyst to get to the conflict between Mara and Roman. But the thing that Pike's character was doing was awful, and it happens in real life. I Care a Lot was stylistically wonderful and was a smart script. I just feel that it decided to sweep the utter disregard for human life under the rug. Although I will admit the ending of the movie was incredibly satisfying. I thought the movie wasn't going to go there, but it did, and I loved it. One of our friends, the main Damie, asked who we are supposed to be rooting for in this film. Mara, who is literally ripping elderly people from their loved ones to rob them of their life savings. Roman, who has his own loose morals and has probably been responsible for the deaths of many people. No one we're not supposed to root for anyone. And sometimes that's a disorienting thing in a film. And as the main Dami also said, they really do gloss over the elder abuse. Check out I Care a Lot to see it for yourself and tell me if you think I'm too emotionally involved and should just enjoy the film for the con heist thriller. It is also check out our contributor Jiren Williams' video review of I Care a Lot on our YouTube page. Extra information: black comedies are supposed to be mean. That's baked into the genre cake. However, they're also supposed to be funny. I Care a Lot goes heavy on the meanness but skimps on the humor, resulting in something deeply unpleasant. Whereas the intent was something satirical of capitalism, we instead just get a wildly mean-spirited piece of business that is wholly unenjoyable to watch. Even some strong acting can't shield you from the gross nature of what's on display out of nowhere. What should have been a solid mix of comedy, crime, and thriller instead has managed to be one of my least favorite viewing experiences in about a year. It's truly a misfire one. I did not enjoy a second of I Care a Lot. Not only isn't funny, it never gets you to root for its protagonist. You only feel contempt for their heinous actions. And that's not a winning formula. Had she been presented as a villain, that's one thing, but she's the hero here. It never works, not even a little bit. The movie makes that misguided gambit, and it never can course correct from there. Marla Grayson Rosamund Pike worships money and has landed on an epic money-making scheme, one that's perfectly legal if wholly immoral. Along with her partner and lover, Eiza González, Mara works as a professional court-appointed guardian for her elderly wards, often working in cahoots with crooked doctors or retirement home managers. She acquires these marks, seizes their assets, and busts them for tons of money for years on end, all through questionable but legal means. The con is going strong when Marla sees a potential golden goose in Jennifer Peters. Diane, with She's Rich, has no family and is a perfect candidate for her. As you might imagine, it doesn't turn out that simple. It turns out that Jennifer is not quite alone in this world, as she's quite missed by Roman Peter Dinklage, a dangerous figure when a little pressure and potential bribery doesn't work. Roman turns up the heat on Mara. Thus begins a battle of two immovable and immoral objects with destruction lying in their wake. Rosamund Pike received a golden for her work here. Sure, she's pretty good, but it's in service of something terrible. Her character is an unrepentant monster who learns nothing. That's a hard protagonist to root for, and you're clearly meant to root for her. She's never developed as a character, either just existing as this lizard-like evil genius. Pike puts some zest into the role, but it's a losing proposition. Peter Dinklage is solidly menacing, but has a similar issue to Pike. Then there's people like Eiza González and Diane West, who are completely wasted. Supporting players include Mon Blair, Chris Messina, Isaiah Whitlock Jr., Alicia Whit-Damon Young, and more. Filmmaker J. Blakeson is to blame here, crafting a nauseating premise that he seems to delight in. Not only is his screenplay reveling in this awfulness, his direction is hollow. Plus, there's no sense of pacing here. Running nearly 2 hours, given this thin plot, is completely inexcusable. Blakeson seems to think that I Care a Lot is firing on all cylinders, and it certainly isn't. In fact, barring Dinklage, and especially Pike, this would be an absolute vacuum of any positivity at all. I Care a Lot wants to say his guardianship in a black comedy for Netflix. It fails miserably for me. It's the worst of 2021 so far. I'm very much in the minority, but that's me. It drops on the streaming service tomorrow, so if you're curious, give it a look. Just know that it decidedly does not have my recommendation in the slightest. In two entirely unrelated ways, I Care a Lot perfectly showcases two of the foremost aesthetic limitations facing contemporary cinema. The simpler one to talk about is that it's just really damn gross looking, with the kind of chintzy digital cinematography that has come to define so many direct-to-streaming films. It has been divvied up between Netflix and Amazon in most of the world. It's so crisp that even the soft focus feels unpleasantly sharp, and there's a whole lot of shallow focus in I Care a Lot. The colors all have a kind of unpleasant bacterial quality, and it's all overlit. The more complicated one is that this is a pretty fine example of the tonal flattening that happens when film storytelling gets too hung up on sand off all the edges, save the cat-style screenwriting that is obsessed with giving the audience what they claim to want rather than what they need. I Care a Lot is a film about unspeakably vicious sociopathic people. There's literally not a single named character who is likable in any significant respect, the bulk of. The film is about these horrible monsters engaged in a battle of wits to see who can get the upper hand over the other through any dirty means possible, and so much the better if it involves violence, all of which, to be clear, is pretty great, and greater still since the cast bringing these people to life is so great at their jobs. Rosamund Pike, no? Stranger to playing Aoral Viper, she's channeling her Gone Girl performance and improving upon it. She's not straining nearly as much against her American accent this time as Mara Grayson, a woman who has made a pretty comfortable living for herself by manipulating the legal system to put herself in power over well-to-do senior citizens, cutting their family members out of the equation as she becomes their legal guardian. From this position, she uses corrupt nursing home administrators to keep her charges harmlessly doped up while she pays her own shell company handsome sums of money. The latest of these is a certain Jennifer Peterson, Diane West, who is perfectly fine on her own, but with hardly any effort, Mara is able to take over her life and then completely destroy it in the process, discovering that Jennifer had an improbably large cache of precious gems hiding in a safe deposit box, and this we discover soon thereafter is because Jennifer had a secret connection to a Russian gangster named Roman Lov Peter Dinklage, whom the world at large has imagined to be dead these last couple of years. And he's not afraid to use all the powers at the disposal of a Russian mobster who has successfully faked his own death to make Mara's life unendurable. Agony for a good 75 minutes. This works sometimes extraordinarily well, sometimes merely as a solid diversion, though, with two war horses like Pike and Dinklage giving everything they've got. Even as a solid diversion, I Care a Lot is an awful lot of fun. And that's to say nothing of the rest of the cast, Wiest, of course, but also Eiza González as Fran Mara's somewhat less venomous business and life partner, Nicholas Logan as a twitchy gangster, Alicia Witt as a Vinal doctor, and especially Chris Messina bringing wolf-like hunger to the role of a menacing mob lawyer. There's not a single weak link in its cast, with writer Director Jay Blakeson getting everyone lined up and facing in the same direction of mild camp, leading to a slightly arch, not exactly funny tone that lasts for most of the first hour. The film's pleasures lie in watching selfish geniuses manipulate systems and situations entirely for the sake of accruing power over other humans. It's disreputable and ugly and has a nice sharp bite to it. There are some vague gestures towards social satire in all of this, with the suggestion that this is what happens when people are dropped into a world that know only economic exploitation and reduces all people to their status as objects to be commodified, though this isn't something it pursues very seriously. Even less is it a serious condemnation of the shameful way that the medical profession turns senior patients into faceless cogs in a financial machine, it seems at best. To be the cover for the film, to be able to do the fun work of indulging in pure wickedness for the sake of it, that starts to point us in the direction of the problem we are living through. A period where movies are required to be nice, relatable, admirable, and there comes a point again, right, about 75 minutes in, where I Care a Lot very visibly loses its nerve. It decides quite out of nowhere that it doesn't just want Mara to be a revolting gargoyle who takes mustache-twirling evil joy in sucking the life and money out of harmless old people. It wants her to be an anti-hero, which isn't precisely the same thing as the villain from whose perspective we watch long passages of the movie. It needs us to at least somewhat root for her and get where she's coming from, and even this isn't quite enough for Blakeson. He also tries to nudge her in the direction of being sympathetic in tiny little ways. This cannot work. Of course, there's no who knew the bullet of how mercilessly she abuses helpless old people and the raw joy she takes in doing so, especially when one of those old people is as inherently likable as Diane was. And so the film starts flailing about in search of a tone it can pursue for more than a few minutes. This isn't just a failure of the film's second half, to be fair. Almost as soon as it gets started, I Care a Lot is biting off more than it can chew. A dark comedy about a conwoman exploiting loopholes in the legal system turns into a mystery. That turns into a gangster thriller. And that's only getting us to that 75-minute mark. The film completely loses track of. Whiston obliges Pike to reinvent her character so many times that even though she's doing exactly what it requires her, at every turn, she's completely at a loss to make a consistent character out of all the different tonal, narrative, and thematic impulses the film demands of her. A monstrous sociopath, a badass girl. Boss, a satiric indictment of badass girl bosses, a breezy caper film con on artist. It's a busy mess of a film, and as long as it maintains a core of dark, sarcastic energy, it's able to keep all of that patched together, but it eventually drops the sarcasm and just holds on into the darkness, and the patch ceases to hold. And that's not even touching the inordinately contrived of the last 10 minutes. It's odd to say of a film that's such nasty fun for such a large amount of its running time that it's a failure, but I Care a Lot collapses in so many ways in its last act that the whole experience is retroactively tainted by it. This film, directed by Jay Blakeson, written by Jay Blond, produced by Teddy Schwarzman, Ben Stillman, Michael Heimler, Jay Blakeson, starring Rosamund Pike, Eiza González, Peter Dinklage, Christinath, and cinematography Doug EMT, edited by Mark Eckersley, music by Marinum Production Company, STXfilms, Black Bear Pictures, Crimple, Beck, distributed by Netflix. Release dates September 12th, 2020 in TIFF, February 19th, 2021 in United States. Running time 118 minutes. Country United States. Language English. Box office 1.3 million. So guys, this is the review of I Care a Lot movie and some information about it. How do you like our today's video? Please let us know by commenting. And if you like this video, please like it, share it, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching.